Right now on Morning News Now, slow burn developing this morning, a summer scorcher for the history books. Out west today, some cities are on track to break their own records for triple-digit temps, with that relentless heat posing a danger for anyone venturing outdoors.
Our waiting room is filled with people with heat and heat-related illness. They just want to get in from the heat.
And back east, severe storms are threatening several states with heavy rain and flash flooding. We have a team tracking it all. Also this morning, White House welcome. President Biden is preparing for what could be a consequential state visit by the Israeli Prime Minister in Washington, and extending an invitation for the Prime Minister to visit as well, months after Israel's controversial election. More on the efforts to strengthen ties and ease tensions with a key ally in the Middle East. Plus, on hold, new developments this morning on a controversial abortion ban in Iowa. A judge now ruling to temporarily block the new law just days after it was signed. We'll break down the ruling and how it could have impacts beyond state lines. And lights, camera, AI, a double feature of Hollywood strikes is shining a spotlight on a growing controversy, the use of artificial intelligence by major studios. We'll take a look at the arguments for and against AI in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to people on the picket lines yesterday. How real is
right outside
AI?
our door.
I mean, they say they have friends who are already being scanned of their likenesses. So
Absolutely.
a lot to get to with that.
Yeah.
But good morning, everybody. I'm Lindsay Reiser in for Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks so much for joining us this Tuesday. We begin this morning with what will be a record-setting day in a summer of suffering.
From California through the deep south, tens of millions of Americans, nearly a third of the country, are waking up under heat alerts this morning. Yesterday, Baker, California was the hottest spot in the U.S., hitting 129 degrees. That was hotter than Death Valley. And this morning in Arizona, Phoenix, my hometown, is expected to smash a 47-year-old record. Today will be the 19th straight day with highs of more than 110 degrees there. By the way, it doesn't get any cooler at night. It doesn't get much cooler, that is. The heat really pushing hospitals to crisis levels as they treat heat-related illnesses. In Texas, demand for power is expected to break records this week as millions just try and stay cool. Air quality alerts have once again been issued in Chicago, New York, and Cleveland as smoke moves in from those wildfires burning in Canada. And in Pennsylvania, crews tripled their resources yesterday in an effort to find two young siblings who were swept away in the fierce floodwaters Saturday. Officials say the children's grandmother was found alive, but their mother was among the 5 killed in the flash floods this week. We have full team coverage of this coast-to-coast triple threat of extreme weather. We're going to begin with NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander in Atlanta.
Well, guys, it looks refreshing out here, but across much of the country, it is hot and only getting hotter. In fact, even by summer standards, the temperatures over the past few weeks have been unprecedented and increasingly unbearable. Consider this. Some 66 million Americans from California to Florida are waking up under heat alerts today. That means they're facing potentially dangerous temperatures. Now, of course, when we talk about heat this high, we're also talking about records falling more and more by the day. We're expecting to see some of that out in Arizona today. But for many across the country, about 60 million Americans, it's a 1-2 punch. We're talking about heat, but we're also talking about air quality alerts as the smoke from those Canadian wildfires are increasingly drifting into the lower 48. Of course, so many people watching the skies, and experts are warning if you feel ill at all, take this heat seriously and make sure that you get relief inside. Back to you.
Good advice, Blaine. Thank you.
Well, it's not just the U.S. dealing with this extreme heat. Southern Europe is being slammed with some of its hottest temperatures ever recorded, and today is expected to be even worse. The island of Sardinia off the west coast of Italy could see temperatures soar as high as 120 degrees, while countries like Spain, Greece, and France are also expecting record-breaking temperatures. NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Lavanga is in a very hot Rome this morning. Claudio, you were there for us yesterday, and in fact, if anybody was watching, they might remember we were in the middle of a conversation and you froze up. It was actually the opposite of freezing. Your phone overheated during the middle of your segment. That's just how hot it is. How are you doing out there today?
Well, that's right. Well, this time, today, I actually got a proper cameraman and a proper camera because of that reason. And hopefully this big camera is not going to melt as much as my phone did yesterday. I can see the cameraman Paolo there is a bit worried. Don't worry about it. But no, it's not only the machinery, of course, that is feeling the heat. We're also melting down a bit. It's very, very hot here. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon here in Rome. It's about 102 Fahrenheit. It's going to go up to 107 later in the day. And as you mentioned, we may break the record in Sardinia with 120 Fahrenheit as it's forecast as the hottest day ever recorded in Europe. Well, it's one record you don't want to be part of, but, you know, we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, Claudio, at least what are called 16 red alerts have been issued for heat in cities just across Italy. That includes where you are in Rome, of course, but we're also in the middle of summer travel season. I'm sure a lot of those people behind you don't live in Rome. They are tourists. It's a wonderful place to visit. How are officials working to keep everyone safe, especially when there's an influx of people just traveling through?
No, absolutely. I can see that the only people around are tourists who are braving it because the Italians are either in air-conditioned environments or in the mountains or the beaches. Well, I'll tell you a couple of things that the officials are doing. Well, the City of Rome and the Civil Protection Agency have deployed 80 volunteers dubbed the Angeli del Freddo, Angels of Freshness is one translation. They're going to hand out bottles of water and advice to people, especially tourists who may find it surprising that it's so hot or may find it difficult to cope with this kind of heat. Also, there is a map that is called Way the Wow. I don't know why, but it's difficult to remember. That maps small public drinkable water fountains like the one that you see over there, where people are filling up bottles and perhaps put some water on their backs, on their necks and their heads. And also, apparently, this heat is also affecting rock and roll because Muse, the big rock band, is having a concert tonight at the stadium here in Rome. And they announced on social media that they are postponing the start of the concert and the opening of the gates because they are concerned that the fans will be there too long in the stadium in this heat. They said, well, guys, just turn up as late as you can. Not very rock and roll, guys.
Yeah, really. All right, Claudio, we've also seen wildfires, another big concern here. Greece, the Canary Islands, you've got these strong winds that are fanning flames. People are evacuating their homes. What is the latest on that front? Are they under control at all?
Well, some are, some aren't. There is wildfires, several wildfires that have been raging around Athens. There's 3 towns there and a campsite where there were 900 children that have been evacuated, and firefighters there are finding it difficult to keep it under control because of the strong winds. Similar situation, a bit better in Spain, where there's a wildfire that has been raging since Saturday on La Palma, one of the islands on the Canary Islands. Well, that now is a bit better. It is kind of under control, but the 4,000 and the 4,000 people who were evacuated since last weekend, most of them are able to return home now, apart from the unlucky ones who had their houses destroyed by the fire. About 20 houses we hear have been destroyed so far there. Back to you guys.
All right, Claudio, try to stay cool. Definitely stay safe. Thank you so much.
All right, let's get the latest forecast here in the U.S. now.
That's right. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us for that. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, guys. Great to see you. And that extreme weather from coast to coast continues. We're looking at the extreme, dangerous, record-breaking heat. We continue to break daily records, monthly records, all-time records, and we're going to continue to break them as this marathon heat continues in the south. And Lindsay, it's such a good point. We're not getting that relief at night. That's when our body kind of recovers, rejuvenates, and we're not getting that because the temperatures during the night, the lows are really high as well. So 63 million people impacted by heat alerts today. We're also watching the chance for some severe storms in spots. Also watching the chance for flooding returning, flash flooding, especially in portions of the Northeast and New England. And then, of course, we're concerned about air quality in portions of the Northern Plains into the Great Lakes and also parts of the East. So 63 million people impacted by heat alerts. We do have an excessive heat warning for Las Vegas, Phoenix, portions of Texas. That includes Dallas, Corpus Christi. We're also looking at a heat advisory. That is in the orange. So Wichita, Albuquerque, El Paso, Houston, New Orleans, you are under a heat advisory. That includes portions of southern Florida as well, because we are looking at temperatures into the 90s once again. You factor in the humidity, though, we're looking at temperatures feeling like over 100 degrees. Keep in mind, the ocean waters off the Florida Keys, off the coast of Florida, they're into the upper 90s, so that's certainly impacting the Sunshine State. Now, as we go throughout today, we're looking at widespread record heat. Phoenix, 117 today. That could break a record of 115. Albuquerque, 105, tying your record of 105. Wichita Falls, 109. Houston, 101. Corpus Christi near 100 degrees, 99. And we're looking at Del Rio coming in at 106, at least expectation later on this afternoon. That is today. We're expecting widespread heat. Once again, tomorrow, record heat. We're looking at Albuquerque, 101, El Paso, 110. That could break the record of 107. Del Rio, 105, Brownsville, 98 degrees, and Mobile, Alabama, into the upper 90s as well. Unfortunately, this will be a story that we're going to be talking about for days ahead because we're looking at the heat wave continuing at least through late week. Look at Las Vegas, temperatures over 110 on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Friday. We're looking at 113, Saturday, 114. Phoenix, no break there either, 117 on Friday. Tucson, you're over the triple digits too. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, same thing in El Paso. And Midland, Texas, we're looking at the triple digits for Thursday and Friday. The brutal heat does continue in parts of Texas, into the Gulf Coast states, the Southeast as well. Temperatures into the 90s in Birmingham, but it will feel like 102. Feeling like 102 in Tallahassee, also feeling like 103 in Tampa. That's because we're factoring that high humidity, so we're going to feel like over 100 degrees in so many spots. And this is going to continue, too. So in Atlanta, into the upper 90s on Thursday, near 100 degrees. Tallahassee, same story. Miami, you're into the mid-90s, but feeling like 105 most of those days. So that's the heat story continuing to go on and on. We're looking at the chance for severe storms in parts of the lower Ohio Valley, into parts of the Missouri Valley. Also, we're going to see the chance for flooding coming back to the Northeast. Also, portions of New England, because we're looking at heavy downpours as we go throughout this afternoon. Radar showing us that we only have a few scattered showers. Where you see those brighter colors, that's where we're looking at the heaviest rain. But we're going to kind of see this develop as we go throughout the afternoon. That daytime heating, the sunshine's going to pop some storms later on this afternoon. And any of those storms could be drenching. Remember, we're so saturated. So any rainfall that does fall could be runoff, and most likely will be runoff. Streams, creeks, rivers are really high as well. 6 million people impacted by a flood watch. That is in that green there, and that's for most of New England into the interior parts of the Northeast. And it's because thunderstorms will be likely, and they're going to drop locally heavy rain. It's going to be quick areas of flood with soaked ground, as I just mentioned. And then we have flash flooding. So we have flooding concerns, flash flooding. Flash flooding is particularly dangerous because it's fast, it's furious. So if you're out and about and you do have a flash flood warning in your area, you want to seek shelter and you want to listen to all the local authorities that are telling you not to be on the roadways. And then we're going to see this developing later on today in portions of the Tennessee Valley, also parts of the Ohio Valley, where we're looking at multiple rounds of thunderstorms this afternoon, guys, or later on this evening, where we could see some really heavy rainfall as well. So the extreme weather continues day after day.
It's either so hot or you're in the middle of a storm. That's been the case for over a week now. All right, Michelle, thank you so much.
So let's bring in Dr. Jennifer Francis. She's a senior scientist at Woodwell Climate Research Center. Good morning, doctor, and thank you for being with us. I mean, this is alarming stuff. Scientists say they've never seen anything like this. We're in uncharted territory. What is causing all of these, not only record-breaking heat waves, but extreme weather that we're seeing that Michelle was just talking about?
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me and connecting this to the climate change story, because it's very much part of this story. One of the clearest connections that we can see between the climate crisis and the kinds of extreme weather events that have been unfolding all around the Northern Hemisphere, as you've reported, are heat waves. And yes, it's July. Yes, it's summer. Yes, heat waves happen. But what we're seeing is these heat waves becoming larger, more intense. And as the forecast we just heard about, they're very persistent. They're lasting longer. This has been expected for a very long time. It's very clearly connected to climate change. You know, as I said, heat waves happen, but we're seeing them happen much more often, and they're much more intense. And what the flooding situation in the Northeast is just the other side of the same coin. This pattern across the North America has been in place for weeks. And so we have the heat mostly over the west and the south, but we've had this very wet pattern stretching along the eastern seaboard, producing these bouts of heavy rainfall that have led to the extreme flooding situation. It's also connected to the fires up in Canada that have been creating all the smoke that's come down over the country. It's been very dry persistently dry, persistently hot up there as well. And this is, again, all connected to this very persistent pattern that's been in place. And this is also a key impact of the climate crisis, is the persistence of these patterns.
So, Dr. Francis, does this mean that we'll see more wildfires, flooding, heat waves? I mean, what does this mean in the short term for the rest of the seasons? And what does this mean in the long term, decades from now?
Well, I have to say the answer is absolutely yes. It won't be the same places experiencing the same kind of extremes each year. Last year, we had the very different situation where we were looking at drought in the Northeast. So different places will experience different sides of this same coin that I'm talking about. But yes, we're going to see an increase in the intensity and the frequency of these kinds of extreme events as we continue to accumulate greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that are mostly the result of burning fossil fuels. And until we can reduce that accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, we're going to see these types of things just get worse and more frequent.
The alarm bells are ringing. Dr. Jennifer Francis, thank you.
This afternoon, President Biden is welcoming Israel's president to the White House. The meeting comes after the Biden administration invited Prime Minister Netanyahu for an official visit more than 6 months after his re-election. White House correspondent Peter Alexander joins us on this now. Hi, Peter. Good to see you. So we understand this invitation came in a phone call between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu ahead of today's meeting with the Israeli president. Explain to us why now for this invite? Why did it take a while? And what else did both men discuss?
Well, it's a good question. There certainly have been tensions between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu. These two leaders have known each other for years, but the White House has expressed real concern about the Netanyahu government's effort to try to impose some new rules that effectively would change the way the Supreme Court works in the state of Israel. These are viewed as sort of far-right proposals that the White House has been opposed to and has made its frustration and its displeasure with that effort by Israel clear. The president had not extended an invitation since Netanyahu took office once again last fall. The White House says that the two men did speak yesterday and that there will be a visit between the two that takes place, with the details still to come, likely before the end of the year, the White House said. But as for these tensions between the two countries, here's part of what we heard from John Kirby, one of the spokespeople here at the White House for the National Security Department. Take a listen.
The president stressed the need to take measures to maintain the viability of a two-state solution and to improve the security situation in the West Bank. He expressed concern about continued settlement growth and called on all parties to refrain from further unilateral measures. Finally, President Biden reiterated, in the context of the current debate in Israel about judicial reform, the need for the broadest possible consensus, and that shared democratic values have always been and must remain a hallmark of the U.S.-Israel relationship.
Obviously, the situation in Israel has been a tense one, as we've witnessed new fighting in recent weeks. The White House has been monitoring that closely. The president's hoping this relationship with Netanyahu allows them to help sort of communicate the democratic policies that the U.S. believes Israel needs to maintain there. Savannah.
Yeah, of course, we've seen that actual violence on the ground, but it is creating tension here in D.C. as well. I mean, we know Israel's president, is expected to address a joint meeting of Congress on Wednesday, but we do understand some members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus will not be attending after some other drama this week regarding this. Is that right, Peter?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the Israeli president is really a ceremonial office. It's held by a man named Isaac Herzog. He is going to be speaking before Congress on Wednesday, and it comes as Democrats are facing some criticism, particularly progressive Democrats, for some of their comments about Israel in recent days. The head of the Progressive Caucus, Pramila Jayapal, excuse me. She is from the state of Washington, and she, in comments recently, described Israel as a racist state. That faced some sharp criticism from Republicans, Kevin McCarthy among them. He said this has to stop about some of the comments from some Democrats and also from some leading Democrats as well, who say that the situation and the U.S. support of Israel needs to be bipartisan. Ultimately, Jayapal apologized for those comments. The White House was said that they were glad that she did that. But Jayapal did communicate her frustration specifically about what she described as racist policies in Israel and her effort to help create a two-state solution, which she fears is getting further and further out of reach.
All right, Peter Alexander covering a lot for us this morning from D.C. Thank you so much.
This morning, a new 6-week abortion ban is temporarily on hold in Iowa. The ban was signed into law on Friday, but yesterday, a judge issued a temporary injunction putting it on hold while legal challenges move through the court system. Because of the ruling, abortion in Iowa is once again legal up to 22 weeks of pregnancy. Joining us right now for more on this is Michelle Goodwin. She's an O'Neill Professor of Constitutional Law and Global Health Policy at Georgetown University. Professor, good to see you. Good morning. So this ruling comes as Planned Parenthood, the ACLU of Iowa, the Emma Goldman Clinic, they all sued to block this 6-week abortion ban. They say it violates the Iowa Constitution. What's their argument?
Well, their argument is that it violates the Constitution and that it violates equal protection and as well as substantive due process. Iowa's already litigated this issue, and the Iowa Supreme Court in 2022 said that abortion should remain legal in the state and that the test should be an undue burden standard, which was the standard that was alive after Planned Parenthood v. Casey. But that was prior to the Supreme Court's decision that overturned Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey. The judge in this case said that it would put a hold on this law and referenced this prior Iowa decision where the standard would be the undue burden standard, meaning that if there were any law that created an undue burden or a substantial obstacle in the path to having an abortion, then it would be illegal. Now, that is not to say that this is a final ruling, because it's not. The judge has simply issued a temporary order that allows for the prior law, which makes abortion legal in the state, to stand until the litigation is complete and a final issue is released.
So what's the timeline on something like that? And what does this injunction mean for abortion access in Iowa for the short term?
Well, for the short term, it means that abortion is legal in the state. Abortion is, in the state of Iowa, there is a 24-hour waiting period, which means that even though abortion is legal in the state, it doesn't mean that if someone shows up in the state needing to have an abortion, that they will be able to receive one on the date that they go into a clinic, because Iowa has a waiting period. But it does mean that this 6-week ban, which in some states they say, well, abortion's legal, it's just that you must have it in your first 6 weeks. Well, at 6 weeks, a lot of women wouldn't know that they actually happen to be pregnant. So it basically is a significant victory at this time for the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, and the clinics that supported bringing this case to challenge the law.
And following yesterday's decision, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds released a statement saying, quote, "I will fight this all the way to the Iowa Supreme Court, where we expect a decision that will finally provide justice for the unborn." What are the possible outcomes here?
Well, you know, it's unknown. It's always difficult to predict exactly where judges or justices will be, save if they've spoken quite publicly on this. Now, as I said, the Iowa courts had already litigated this issue and came down on the side of their state's constitution to say that it does provide for equal protection and substantive due process, and that those provisions reach the lives of women, and that in order to protect women's equal protection as well as their substantive due process, then abortion should stand. We don't know if it does go up to the Iowa Supreme Court, if that would be a similar ruling, but it does mean that for the people in the state of Iowa, the women and girls in that state who might need this particular care for health and safety reasons or for other reasons, that they can get that medical care. It's also worth noting that the governor has framed this as an issue involving the abortion industry, which is quite inflammatory, and I think we might begin to see more of that kind of language with these bans.
I appreciate you helping us understand what's happening. Professor Michelle Goodwin, thank you.
Well, there will be a key hearing in court today in the case involving former President Trump's alleged mishandling of classified materials. The pre-trial hearing will be the first time federal judge Aileen Cannon will preside over a hearing in the case. Neither Trump or his co-defendant Walnada are expected to appear in court. Now, Trump pleaded not guilty last month to 37 counts of alleged mishandling of classified documents that were found in his Mar-a-Lago home last year. He has denied any wrongdoing in the case. The trial was supposed to begin next month, but it is unclear when it will actually get underway. Both sides have requested delays, and the judge has yet to rule on those motions.
All right, much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, a shared struggle. New research shows many women may be facing similar challenges when it comes to addressing mental health. We're going to break down the problem and possible solutions.
But up first, after the break, a show of support for actor Kevin Spacey at his sexual assault trial in London in the form of surprise testimony by Elton John. How it could help the defense. Stay with us. Welcome back. We have some breaking news to bring you. A U.S. national who is believed to be an American soldier is being detained in North Korea this morning. That information is according to an American official familiar with the situation. So here is what we know so far. The United Nations says the unnamed person was detained after crossing the border from South Korea without authorization. The American national was on a tour of the Joint Security Area. That's part of the demilitarized zone between the two countries. In a tweet, the UN said it was working to resolve the incident. We'll, of course, continue to follow this and bring you any updates as they develop this morning.
A settlement has been reached in the fatal boat crash involving the family of disbarred lawyer and convicted murderer Alex Murdaugh. The family of Mallory Beach is set to receive $15 million, according to the agreement. And officials say 19-year-old Mallory died when a boat driven by Murdaugh's son Paul crashed into a bridge in 2019. Both the convenience store who sold Paul alcohol and Alec Murdaugh were defendants in the case.
Now let's get to the ongoing sexual assault trial involving the actor Kevin Spacey in London. On Monday, Elton John and his husband, David Furnish, appeared via video link as defense witnesses for Spacey. The 63-year-old actor has pleaded not guilty to accusations that he sexually assaulted 4 men in the UK. For more on this, we are joined by MSNBC legal analyst Kristen Gibbons-Fedden. Kristen, good morning. Thanks for being here. So Kevin Spacey is facing a dozen charges in total in connection with this case. One of the alleged victims accuses Spacey of grabbing him inappropriately. And here's where this particular detail comes in with this particular testimony. This was while driving, he says, to one of Elton John's gala events, something he's held for like a decade now to raise money for AIDS. John and his husband said Spacey did not attend the gala, though, the year that this alleged incident happened, but recalled he had attended a few years before. How important is that specific testimony for Spacey's defense team? Walk us through this strategy to just set up doubt about the event as a whole.
Yeah, it's a major contradiction in the victim's account. And that's essentially what every defense strategy does. And even though this is the UK, they have the same burden of proof. The defendant has the presumption of innocence, and the prosecutor has the burden to prove the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. So this major inconsistency would tend to discredit that particular victim's account. But I think it's important to remember, one, is that that particular victim is one of 4. And he is describing a pattern of abuse that is similar to at least 2 other victims, excuse me. And the other thing to really emphasize is that while this may seem to undermine the victim's credibility, it's also essential to remember that trauma can affect the memory in various ways. Victims aren't going home and writing down the exact date by which they're sexually assaulted. So it's going to be really incumbent upon the prosecutor to really highlight that this is normal in sexual trauma, so that she doesn't lose the jury on this one point.
In addition to hearing from Elton John and his husband, the court also heard 10 character references from friends and family, others in the entertainment industry. Walk us through the type of testimony walk us through the type of role, that this type of testimony plays in a case like this, to hear from those people.
Yeah, it really works to humanize Spacey. And whenever you have a defendant, someone accused of some type of crime, and in this particular case, horrific sexual assault, you really want to humanize your client, humanize the defendant, so the jury can have, empathy for them. One particular character witness painted Spacey as like a brother, and while another said he was positive, supportive, and respectful and professional. But I think it's important to remember that while celebrity testimonies command attention, and they can lend weight to the defense, jurors have to really question if those experiences with those rich and powerful people that Spacey had testify is truly indicative of Spacey's behavior with that power dynamics with the victim.
Absolutely. So this is 4 weeks now that we've been in this case. What do you think we can expect next?
Well, the defense is going to finish presenting their case. The prosecution could have a rebuttal. And then the prosecution and the defense are going to close. The prosecution's likely going to underscore Spacey's alleged sexual bullying. That's that theme that she has been putting on throughout the trial. And the defense is going to aim to discredit the victims, really kind of suggesting that they're motivated by money. And then the jury will get the case, and then we'll hear a verdict.
All right, Kristen Gibbons-Fedden, thank you so much.
All right, let's look at more international news now, starting with the latest on the war in Ukraine.
NBC News foreign correspondent Ali Arouzi joins us with more on that. Hey, Ali, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. Good morning, Lindsay. That's right. Russia has launched a drone and missile attack on southern and eastern Ukraine overnight, damaging infrastructure in the Black Sea port of Odessa. The attack on Odessa, one of Ukraine's main ports for exporting grain, comes after the Kremlin vowed retaliation for a blast on the Kerch Bridge, which links the Russian mainland to the Crimea Peninsula. There were reports of damage to housing, but no reports of fatalities. Rising water from the Yamuna River in India has reached the walls of the Taj Mahal for the first time in 45 years after incessant monsoon rains in northern India swelled rivers across the region. The 17th century mausoleum in Agra is counted as one of the world's new 7 wonders of the world. And finally, around 40 boats took part in a practice run of the hugely ambitious opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics on the River Seine, almost exactly a year before the sporting extravaganza is due to begin. For the first time in Olympics history, the opening ceremony will take place outside the main stadium, with competitors and officials set to travel through Paris on a flotilla of over 100 vessels, turning the Seine into something sensational.
Oh, nice. Every detail we get about these Olympics, it just sounds so epic.
Can you imagine being just a tourist along the banks and just seeing that?
Or how they're going to play beach volleyball right in front of the Eiffel Tower. Can you imagine seeing that? It's amazing. So cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ali. Coming up, keeping your kids healthy. The FDA just approved a new drug to protect infants from RSV. What parents need to know.
Plus, TikTok might tell you, all right, you got ADHD, but isn't that kind of like checking WebMD? We're going to explain the downside of self-diagnosing next on Morning News Now. Welcome back, everybody. The Food and Drug Administration has approved an injectable drug that can protect children up to 2 years old from the respiratory illness RSV. The drug is called Beyfortus, and it can be given as a single injection. Children up to age 2 who are vulnerable, though, to serious infections from RSV can get a second dose once eligible. So now the CDC is expected to meet and discuss recommendations on who should get the shots. Remember, RSV causes a lower respiratory illness. It's generally mild, but it can cause some serious cases, which can lead to pneumonia. We're going to have much more on this topic with Dr. Natalie Azar in our next hour.
Here's a tease for you. Stick around. Well, now it's time for our weekly mental health check-in. New research is shedding light on how women might be struggling to get the help that they need. We're going to explain why some feel they're not being taken seriously.
And plus, TikTok might tell you it's ADHD, but experts say don't be so quick to self-diagnose. Let's bring in Dr. Robbie Ludwig for more on this. She's a psychotherapist and an award-winning reporter. Good to see you, and thanks for being with us. Let's first start with this survey that found from the UK. It found 1 in 3 women actually fear being seen as too emotional when seeking help for their mental health. I mean, many of them even reported being asked if they were overthinking things, which is just like such a sexist trope.
Yeah, wow.
How can they advocate for themselves if something like that comes up?
Well, first of all, I think it's really important to have good communication with your doctor, or to find the right doctor that listens to you, that validates you, so that whatever complaints you're having are taken seriously. When there is this kind of disconnect or judgment or labeling, it really is very detrimental to a woman's mental health. She can begin to doubt herself. She can feel not believed. And also, serious health conditions can be missed if, doctors are not listening to women because they're judging them instead.
Wow, I mean, like you said it, just such a trope. It's so discouraging to hear that happening even in a medical setting. And also, before we get on to our next topic, we do want to say that if you or anyone you know is struggling, you can call or text, please call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It is right there on your screen, just 3 numbers, 988. Now we want to talk about that ongoing trend on TikTok that Lindsay mentioned. So one study found at least half of the videos on social media might be spreading misinformation about ADHD. That leads to more people self-diagnosing the illness. Like we said earlier, it kind of sounds like, you know, a Gen Z WebMD search, that type of thing. Are there other explanations for why people might be feeling similar symptoms to ADHD and then kind of identifying with these videos?
Absolutely. In fact, in order to be properly diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, it really requires a professional, and it's through a process of elimination. So other things that can mask is having attention deficit disorder or ADHD are symptoms like depression, sleep deprivation, stress. Certain features of PTSD can also masquerade as having an attention deficit disorder. So it's really important that we don't self-diagnose on TikTok, especially because there are no laws really when it comes to spreading misinformation in TikTok. And that's why we need to be really educated when it comes to our own mental health and getting the proper treatment and not jumping to conclusions.
Doctor, I want to ask you finally about a new report from the Virginia Commonwealth University. It's sort of changing our idea of where aggression comes from. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so there are many different types of aggression. And what this study suggested is that not all aggression is impulsive or due to not having control. So there's highly reactive aggression. We might feel this during road rage, right? We're very angry and we want to let other people around us know that we're angry as we attempt to protect ourselves. And then there's planned aggression, where we're really thinking about, the intention is different, where we're thinking about, let's say, revenge or bullying. There's more of a sadistic component to this kind of aggression. So there are lots of different kinds of aggression, and it's good to be aware of it.
Just like those kinds we showed you in those fun
stock
pictures
images.
there.
Yeah.
Outside of the car.
All right, Dr. Robbie Ludwig, we covered a lot of ground. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, Eli Lilly's Alzheimer treatment is getting closer to winning FDA approval. In a statement, the company said they applied for approval last quarter and expect the agency to act by the end of the year. The application comes following positive clinical trial results, which showed the drug slowed the progression of Alzheimer's disease by 35%.
Coming up, it is a Hollywood-style rivalry. Actors and writers on strike and speaking out against studios and AI. More on the fight pitting creatives against computers.
And look what you made her do. Pop superstar Taylor Swift and her incredibly popular Epic Eras Tour getting the attention of the Federal Reserve. How Swifties are impacting the economy. This is Morning News Now.
Welcome back. Two of Hollywood's biggest unions are striking at the same time for the first time in 60 years, halting major productions, red carpets, even social media feeds across the world.
Yeah, well, we want to take a look at one of the issues at the heart of both strikes. That's the use of artificial intelligence within the entertainment world.
NBC News cybersecurity reporter Kevin Collier joins us now for more on this. Good morning, Kevin. You know, I was out there with actors on the picket lines yesterday, and one of them brought up a good thing about AI, which we know is one of their big sticking points here, and that is, okay, if you need a couple of line pickups that you don't have to bring me in, that's fine. What are some of the pros when using this technology?
Well, I mean, you know, AI is a pretty broad term, so you could say that any of the visual or audio mimicry tech falls under that category. We all remember Robert De Niro and The Irishman being a little the de-aging stuff. For instance, it's pretty baked into a lot of big pictures in general at this point. From the studio's perspective, it's also a way for, to save money for actors who don't have speaking roles.
I want to play a little bit of what SAG-AFTRA President Fran Drescher had to say about AI last week specifically, and we'll talk on the other side.
AI. This is a moment of history. That is a moment of truth. If we don't stand tall right now, we are all going to be in trouble. We are all going to be in jeopardy of being replaced by machines.
So, Kevin, I think we keep talking about AI really nebulous ways. I mean, I love what Lindsay just said in terms of one of the practical uses, but let's talk about some of the back and forth here, what she's upset about. There's been kind of this back and forth over scanning people, especially background actors, and then essentially just using that instead of the actor. They only get paid one day because then they just have this scan of them. Walk us through what some of the back and forth is on things like that and what that ultimately looks like. I mean, does that really mean that actors eventually just get replaced by scans of themselves?
Yeah, well, from the conversations I've had with folks in SAG-AFTRA, the biggest concern is really the burgeoning actor. That's the primary one. You know, major celebrities might have to deal with some of these weird legacy concerns. Tom Hanks has talked about being inserted into movies long after he's gone, for instance. But according to these actors, you know, you can cut future generations, entire classes of burgeoning upcoming actors from even having a career. They'll get scanned once. They'll get inserted into movies without their actual involvement. They won't get to work their way up. You know, it kind of cuts that off at the roots.
So some of the demands from the unions here, WGA example, the Writers Guild, they are demanding that AI can't write or rewrite literary material, that AI can't be used as source material, and that works covered by union contracts can't be used to train AI. I mean, those demands were rejected. We know actors, they're worried about their likeness being used in perpetuity without compensation, without permission even. How close do you think we'll get on these negotiations?
Well, you know, both the Actors Union and the studios are giving different accounts of what the studios have offered. But at least both are saying that a contract would include requiring actors or letting actors have the option of giving consent before their likeness would be used in perpetuity. But where does that go from here? We really don't know. This is one of the first major organized labor actions against being replaced by AI. You know, this is something that has loomed large, but we've not really seen it play out so vividly, so, you know, in everyone's faces before. So this could set precedent.
One more really quick question. We have about 30 seconds left with you. Is this overhyped? I mean, you know, one former studio head said he thinks that the AI issue is overhyped, but the actors I talked to said, no, it's here now.
I mean, it is being used. There are actors who say that they will go in for an extra, role and be photographed in a lot of places and then told to go home. Wow. It's almost impossible to say, but it is actually being used right now. If that's the question. Yeah.
Kevin Collier, thank you so much.
Let's get to some financial headlines now. Microsoft hopes to extend the deadline for its contract with Activision Blizzard.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us for that and more other money news. Good morning, Silvana.
Hey, Lindsay. Hey, Savannah. Good morning to you. Yes, so Microsoft is reportedly in talks to extend its deal contract with Activision Blizzard, which is set to expire today. Now, the move would let the companies overcome the remaining regulatory hurdles to the $69 billion acquisition. The expiration of the contract wouldn't automatically lead to the deal collapsing, but it would afford either party the right to walk away from the transaction. Microsoft and UK antitrust regulators got court approval yesterday to extend a review of the deal. TikTok now supports passkeys on the iPhone. It's the latest app to add support for passkey authentication, letting users log into their accounts using biometrics such as Face ID and Touch ID. Now, once you set it up, your passkey is saved to the iCloud keychain, so it will work on your other Apple devices. For now, TikTok is only rolling out the feature in Asia, Africa, Australia, and South America, with the U.S. to follow. Harrods is opening a private members club in Shanghai as the luxury department store pins its growth hopes on China. The club will have a Gordon Ramsay restaurant, a bar and lounge, private dining rooms, and terraces. Annual fees will start at around $21,000. Only 250 people will initially be able to join the club, and they will have access to other services Harrods already offers, including premium travel options.
So who knew
they got $21,000.
The travel game, yeah. All right, Silvana, thank you.
You got it.
It's been anything but a cruel summer for Taylor Swift.
That's right. The pop megastar not only became the first woman to have 4 albums on Billboard's top 10 at once. That's happening right now. She's also helping boost the American economy. The Fed is even noticing. Swift's massive Eras tour is being credited with helping fuel the national tourism economy. For more, we are joined by editor-in-chief at Investopedia, Caleb Silver. Caleb, here, not not to talk latest unemployment numbers, not to talk inflation numbers. You are here to talk Taylor Swift. Tell us just how much of an impact she's had. What do these numbers look like?
Yeah, you know you have juice when you make it into the Federal Reserve's Beige Book, and we're big fans of Swiftonomics here at Investopedia. The Fed has its Beige Book, which is a summary of economic conditions around the country. It made it into the Philadelphia Fed's report because she is boosting tourism with these tours, packing hotels to levels beyond, way beyond what was happening pre-pandemic. That's happening in Philadelphia. That's happening in Cincinnati, Chicago, Denver, contributing tens of millions of dollars to GDP just by showing up for these multi-day tours and packing stadiums and hotels.
It's not even the hotel super chains. I mean, there's a real local economic impact too, right? The mom and pop places.
Absolutely. And think about it. You take your family or send your kids to the concert. You're going to go out for dinner. You're going to spend money in that city. You need hotel rooms for everybody. You got to fill up with gas. So a major contributor, and cities around the country would like to see this go on forever and ever more because she is really bringing home the bottom line. She could say she's got that Midas touch on the Chevy door. You need to calm down. This has become a real economic story, and these tours are bringing a lot of money.
I'm speechless. Caleb,
you're speechless.
Yes, I thank you for the preparation. I very much appreciate that. That was good. You mentioned it's not just these big hotel chains. It's also not just Philadelphia. It's surrounding cities, right? Surrounding towns. It she comes to town, and then the whole area really just sees this lift.
That's right. Packing Airbnbs, packing small hotels, big hotels. Again, the restaurant economy. She's getting the Denver tours suspected to generate some $140 million in revenue for the city, for the state, all the way around. And then she's going international. So this tour could bring in billions of dollars by the time it's over. She's doing pretty well, too, making an estimated $14 million every time she steps on the stage, every night of the Eras Tour.
Yeah, it's an incentive for these artists, too, as well, with streaming and maybe less revenue on actual albums. But if there's a tourism slump, is it as simple enough as just saying, okay, one of these big stars just needs to go on tour?
Well, Taylor's different. As we all know, that Tay-Tay's a little bit different, and she is packing stadiums night after night after night, and people are showing up a day in advance, staying a day after. So it's helpful for the cities, obviously, but these artists need to tour to make money. They're not making their money over streaming, so that's why you see so many artists on tour, not just because the pandemic's over. This is where they make their money, and this is how they're doing it, and they're contributing to economies around the country.
From firsthand experience, I contributed to the hotel and restaurant economy in Nashville and then in Philadelphia, and I'm heading to another one. I'm doing international. Have you seen it yet?
Not yet, but I did send my girls, and you're doing your part to lift the economy.
There we go.
She is making a big difference.
Wow,
but they're,
Savannah, we salute you.
Yeah, thank you very much. You're the one.
Where did your girls go?
They went to the Meadowlands this year and had a great time with their friends, and they're still talking about it because she really brings it in these concerts, and people are loving it, and it's contributing to the economy. Again, you make it into the Fed's Beige Book, which is actually red, ironically. You're doing something right. Swiftonomics is the real deal. Much respect
so much
to Tay-Tay.
Better show your girls this hit. You are like all in it.
Oh, all night long I was listening to her greatest hits.
I love it. Caleb Silver, thank you so much. Well, coming up, proof that you're never too old to go after your hoop dreams.
When we come back, we're going to introduce you to a group of grandmothers competing on the court for a very special trophy. You're watching Morning News Now.
Welcome back. WNBA star Sabrina Ionescu went all out on Friday during an all-star three-point contest. She set an astonishing record of 37 points. That beats Steph Curry's record of 31 points. Since then, she has challenged Curry to a shootout, which he accepted. That means we could see the ultimate contest between the three-point king and the three-point queen. For those not familiar with the three-point contest, it's the ultimate test for long-range shooters where contestants have a minute to take as many shots as they can from behind the three-point line. Did I sound like I knew what I was talking about, Lindsay?
Yeah, I'm not a gambling woman, but my money's on her. Amazing.
I know, right? So cool.
Yeah, we want to stick with basketball to end the hour. And the grannies who aren't letting their age stand in the way of playing their favorite sport. NBC News political embed Alex Tabbitt reports from Iowa.
They shoot. They score. They FaceTime their grandchildren.
FaceTime Kiana Price.
This is Granny Basketball.
I think we're redefining what old is.
This past weekend, grannies from across the country traveled to Decorah, Iowa for the 18th annual Granny National Basketball Championships.
And our oldest player in the league is 92, I believe.
I might have thought that grannies can't play competitive. They could definitely play ball, but now that I'm between the court, it is competitive.
Grannies putting their bodies on the line to take home the trophy.
Was it worth it?
Sure. There are some key differences between regular basketball and granny basketball. In granny basketball, there are 6 players in the court instead of 5. No jumping is allowed, and there's no running allowed. But hurrying is encouraged.
What's the difference between running and hurrying?
As a referee, if you're wondering whether it's running, then we call it running.
Barb Trammell founded granny basketball in 2005. Today, she wears many hats in the league, including referee.
It's wonderful exercise, great camaraderie, wonderful stress reliever.
Go Mustangs! And a sense of community that benefits the body and the mind.
You can't be stressed out about anything when you're running around chasing a ball.
In between games, grannies doing whatever they can to cool off. And in the finals, the Carlisle, Iowa Redbirds take home the championship.
2, 3, fly Redbird!
But for some grannies, the community they built along the way is the real prize.
I recently lost my husband, and my team has been such a support to me, and they've been there for me every step of the way.
Oh, I love that story so much. Our thanks to Alex Tabbitt. This year's tournament is raising money for the Raptor Resource Project, a nonprofit that specializes in the preservation of bald eagles and other birds. Such a great story.
They shoot, they
Slow-mo
score, they FaceTime.
was so well used. It's awesome. Wait, let's do our own. I know. All right, here's another hour of morning news now.
It's so much fun around here. Stick with us. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
Good to be with you. I'm Lindsay Reiser, in for Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, summer scorcher. This morning, about a third of America is waking up to excessive heat advisories. The high temps are making history across the Southwest, with records being broken by the day. That's not the only major weather headline this morning. Tens of millions of Americans are still suffocating from the smoke of those Canadian wildfires. And even more severe weather is tearing across the Midwest and Northeast. We are covering it all in your Tuesday forecast coming up. We're also following some breaking news this morning. Captured. American officials say a U.S. national believed to be a U.S. soldier has been detained by North Korea. We've got the latest on this developing story in just a moment. Plus, critical new evidence. What we're learning this morning about the investigation into those infamous Gilgo Beach murders on Long Island and the suspect now under arrest. Why this pickup truck, found hundreds of miles away in South Carolina, is now catching the eye of investigators. And it's just a number. TikTok isn't just for Gen Z influencers anymore. Later in the hour, Savannah is going to take a look at the rise in older TikTokers on your feeds and why you're seeing more of that now. You got to give us a little more of a tease.
Oh my goodness, they are so adorable and fantastic, and they have these full second acts. They retired from careers.
Wow.
Their kids kind of got them into TikTok during COVID. They were kind of honestly trying to help their kids out. Just wait till you see the videos they're coming up with. It's awesome. They're on the basketball court. They're on TikTok. There you go.
Everywhere. Taking over the world. All right, we're going to begin though with that blistering heat wave.
That's right. This morning, about a third of Americans are under excessive heat advisories, with historic temperatures and poor air quality spreading across the country. The effects of the nonstop heat are now being felt at overwhelmed hospitals. In Phoenix, hospitals are reaching crisis levels treating heat-related illnesses. NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander is following all of it for us from Atlanta this morning. Hi, Blaine.
Well, guys, good morning to you. That's right. In fact, here in Georgia, some parts of the state will get up to 100 degrees today. That's the hottest day of the year so far. In fact, across the country, records are falling so fast that it's hard to keep track at this point. And other places are seeing deadly and relentless rain. It's all just another reminder that Mother Nature's fury has become a trademark of the summer.
Even by typical summer standards, across much of the country, the heat is unprecedented and increasingly unbearable. From California to Florida, more than 60 million Americans are under heat alerts, facing potentially dangerous temperatures. It's the latest in a relentless heat wave gripping the South, with record highs falling by the day and more on the way.
We topped out at 116, tying a record high today.
In Phoenix, temperatures today are expected to top 110 degrees for the 19th straight day. And in Death Valley, the aptly named Furnace Creek reached a sweltering 128 degrees, making it the hottest July 16th ever recorded anywhere. Weather this hot is not just uncomfortable, it's unsafe. In Utah, a hiker collapsed under the blazing sun, prompting this search and rescue. And in California, a man died from heat-related injuries while on a bike ride. In some parts of the country, it's a 1-2 punch of heat and unhealthy air quality.
Once again, can't see the trees, the mountains.
With 66 million Americans still feeling the effects of Canadian wildfires that last month painted New York skies an ominous orange.
You should not be outdoors, especially with senior citizens and children, and again, those who have health conditions already.
All of it following a week of devastating flooding across the Northeast, including Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where officials are still searching for 2 children swept away by flash floodwaters. 2-year-old Matilda Shields and her 9-month-old brother Conrad are both missing after their family car was swept away. Incredibly, their father and older brother managed to survive.
We ask that you continue to pray for the return of Conrad and Mattie, and for the safety of all those committed to bringing them home to us.
And back to that heat, you know, the U.S. is certainly far from alone in this. In fact, a number of countries around the world are seeing the same kinds of record-breaking heat waves. Now, guys, it can certainly be easy to just write this off and say, you know what, this is just summer. But experts say it's very important to take this seriously and really limit your time outside. Ladies.
Absolutely. And keep having the conversation about this. Blaine, thank you so much.
All right, let's get a check on the extreme heat and the stormy weather heading for the Midwest.
Michelle Grossman is back with us with the latest on that and more. Hey, Michelle.
Hey there, guys. Great to see you. And yeah, we're going to continue to see this heat continuing. It's dangerous. It's record breaking. We break records pretty much every single day, whether it's a daily high, an overnight low, a monthly record, or even an all-time record. So that's going to continue. We're going to be talking about this for days, even weeks to come. We have that heat dome just tacked in place. It's not budging. We're also watching the chance for severe storms once again, and we are watching the chance for flooding, flash flooding too, in portions of the Northeast and also New England. So this is sort of the snapshot for today. Another busy day weather-wise, not much changing. Our atmosphere is sort of in a traffic jam. Things are not moving out, and that's why we're watching 63 million Americans under a heat alert once again. The orange, that's your heat advisory. That includes Wichita, Albuquerque, El Paso, New Orleans, also Houston. We also have excessive heat warnings in Phoenix, Las Vegas, also Dallas. We're going to see temperatures soaring into the triple digits, well into the triple digits, by the way. And even in portions of southern Florida, we're not going to be into the triple digits, but it will feel like that with the heat index, that humidity kind of combined in. So widespread record heat once again today. El Paso today, 110, 117 in Phoenix, 109 in Wichita Falls. New Orleans, you're going to be hot too, near 100 degrees. We're going to come in at 97, the record of 97 for today. And then tomorrow, count on more records falling because we're looking at temperatures into the 100s, 110 in El Paso, 105 in Del Rio, and Mobile, Alabama. You're going to come in at 97. The record there is 98 degrees, so you certainly could meet that record. And this is going to last. So we're looking Thursday, Friday, Saturday with so many triple digits still on the map. And in Lubbock and Midland, Texas, we're looking at temperatures really hot as well. Brutal heat in the southeast as well. Temperatures well into the 90s, 96 in Tallahassee. It's going to feel like 102. It will feel like 105 in Miami. And look at Charleston. It's going to feel like 106 there, feeling like 117 in Corpus Christi. And this heat stays in place as well on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in so many places. So definitely hydrate. Stay indoors if you can. Find that air conditioning. Guys, we're also watching this cold front. That's going to bring the chance for some downpours later today in the Northeast. Also parts of the Ohio Valley. That's going to bring the chance for some flooding there as well.
Oh, all right, Michelle Grossman, thank you so much. Yeah. Well, turning now to some breaking news out of North Korea. The United Nations command says a U.S. national has been detained there after crossing over the military demarcation line from South Korea. NBC News foreign correspondent Megan Fitzgerald has more on this. She joins us now. Hey, Megan, so we know this is still a developing story, but what can you tell us about this incident at this point?
Savannah, good morning. Good to be with you. What we know is, according to a U.S. official that has familiarity with this situation, and tells us that U.S. national is believed to be a U.S. soldier that crossed into North Korea without authorization. Now, we are receiving a tweet that just came in from the UN command, which oversees the area there, that I want to read for you. This tweet says the U.S. national on the JSA, which is the Joint Security Area orientation tour, crossed without authorization the military demarcation line into the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. We believe he is currently in DPRK custody and are working with our KPA counterparts to resolve this incident. There's a lot of questions here. We know that this is a highly militarized area along the border there between North and South Korea. A lot of questions as to how this happened in the first place. But of course, this is a developing story that we will continue to monitor.
Absolutely. All right, Megan Fitzgerald, let us know when you get more information. Thank you so much.
Well, a temporary injunction has put Iowa's brand new 6-week abortion law on hold this morning. Yesterday, a judge issued the block after abortion providers challenged the measure. You're seeing video here when the bill had just been signed into law by Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds Friday. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster joins us now with the latest. So, Shaq, walk us through the court's ruling and what impact this will have on abortion rights in Iowa.
Hi there. Well, the law that Kim Reynolds signed on Friday, it blocked and restricted access to abortion after about 6 weeks, when many women don't know that they are pregnant. This puts that law on a temporary hold. So it now goes back to the law as it was before that bill was signed, meaning that women can have access to abortion up to about 20 weeks of pregnancy. This is something that we can expect to really be litigated. It's a key priority for conservatives in the state. And I want you to listen to what we heard from the folks who sued the state, saying that this was unconstitutional. Listen to their reasoning over why they filed that lawsuit.
Today, the district court recognized that this law bans abortion before many people know that they are pregnant, at just 6 weeks after a last menstrual period, or about 2 weeks after a missed period. And as such, it violates the state constitution under the undue burden standard that the Iowa Supreme Court has made clear is the governing standard for now. This order is essential to protecting the bodily autonomy rights and freedom of Iowans.
Now, the law was in effect through the weekend. We learned that some abortion providers had to cancel appointments or reschedule appointments as this was being litigated, as they were asking for this temporary pause. But what this does now, and what happens now, is that this law will be assessed on the merits. They'll be able to go through and see, is it truly constitutional or not? And then the judge will make a ruling for or against the law on the merits. But the judge putting a temporary pause on that right now, so that abortion access could remain in the state of Iowa for the time being.
And Shaq, what do we know about what the governor plans to do? She's vowing to fight this?
Yes, she's vowing to fight it. She said she'll fight it aggressively. One thing that we know is that pretty much everyone expects this to go back to the court. I was looking through the ruling even again this morning, and the district court is suggesting that this will go before the Supreme Court. Kim Reynolds saying, quote, "I will fight this all the way to Iowa Supreme Court, where we expect a decision that will finally provide justice for the unborn." Some big changes since the Supreme Court last took this case and last assessed a similar law. One, Roe v. Wade has been overturned at the federal level, and two, the state Supreme Court has gotten increasingly conservative. So it is possible that there could be some success once it gets to that level.
And Shaq, I want to switch gears here before we let you go. The Illinois Supreme Court will rule today on a controversial law that would end cash bail across the state. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this was a law that was passed in 2021. It was scheduled to go into effect on January 1st of this year. It would eliminate cash bail across the state of Illinois. So instead of there being a monetary amount, or instead of there being a dollar amount that a defendant pays after being arrested and detained, that decision would go over and be turned over to a judge. A judge would determine detention based on a new criteria. The big advantage here is that it takes money and takes wealth advantage out of the criminal criminal justice system. But opponents, and we heard many of them during the 2022 midterm election cycle, opponents say that this will lead to people who should be detained being able to be released as they await trial. We'll be keeping a close eye on that. The court is expected to release that decision at about 10 a.m. Eastern time.
Okay, Shaq, appreciate it.
Well, another major case is now moving through the legal system this morning. A Florida judge is set to begin pretrial conferences for the criminal case against former President Donald Trump. It marks the first time the judge will be hearing arguments in the classified documents case since Trump's indictment a month ago. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney joins us now from Fort Pierce, Florida on this. Hey, Ken, good morning. So walk us through what we can expect to see in court today. And of course, we're all really wondering, is there a possibility that there is a ruling on a future trial date, since we still don't know that?
Good morning, Savannah. Yeah, that's the big question. That's what we're watching for. It's certainly possible because Judge Aileen Cannon late yesterday ordered the parties to be prepared to discuss the issue of scheduling at this hearing today. And they've both briefed on it. Obviously, there's a huge divergence between the prosecution and the defense. Prosecutors want the trial to be held in December. Trump's defense lawyers have suggested it should be postponed until after the election. And so Cannon may or may not rule on that issue today, but we may get a sense of what she's thinking based on the questions she asked the lawyers. And this is really the biggest issue before her, because this ruling could change the whole nature of this case. You know, as no less than Bill Barr, the former attorney general, said recently, if this trial is postponed until after the election and Donald Trump is elected president, this case may not go forward because his attorney general presumably would drop it. Savannah.
That's a very important point. Well, Ken, this isn't the first time that Judge Cannon is presiding over a lawsuit that involves the former president. Walk us through what we know about the judge and her relationship here.
Yeah, Judge Cannon was appointed by Donald Trump to the bench in 2020 at the young age of 39. She's a conservative member she was a member of the Federalist Society. She's a former federal prosecutor. She's drawn praise from lawyers who have practiced in her courtroom. And of course, she's best known, though, across the country for that controversial ruling or series of rulings she made with regard to the search warrant of Donald Trump's house down here in Mar-a-Lago, where she imposed a special master and some other conditions. She was reversed and repudiated by a conservative appeals court. And a lot of people viewed that ruling as curiously favorable to the former president. And now we're going to see how she approaches the very important issues preceding this potential trial in the classified documents case, Savannah.
Yeah, so Ken, today's hearing, of course, it's going to get into these issues related to the handling of the documents. What do we know at this point, what we might hear on that today?
Yeah, that's what this hearing ostensibly is actually for. And there's going to be a lot of issues here, one of which is, can there be secret evidence, essentially? Will the judge allow the government to hide or redact some of the classified documents, even from the jury? That is allowed under the Classified Information Procedures Act, but they're going to have to argue over it. There will be issues about lawyers getting security clearances and how the documents are handled and what rules apply to what the defense can do. So a lot of interesting issues, some of which are arcane, but very important in a case involving many, many highly sensitive classified documents, Savannah.
All right, Ken Delaney, and thank you very much.
The prospect of a third-party candidate launching a presidential bid has become closer to reality. Last night, Washington-based advocacy organization No Labels held a campaign-like event in New Hampshire. That event was attended by former Utah Governor Republican Jon Huntsman and by West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, who refused to rule out a presidential run with the group. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard joins us now from Manchester, New Hampshire, with more on his exclusive interviews. Vaughn, this is so interesting. So let's start with Senator Manchin. What do you know about his stance and how likely it is that he could be a third-party candidate?
Hey, good morning, Lindsay. Look, Joe Manchin has become kind of a wild card in the U.S. Senate, perhaps the most influential. He is the Democrat who often bucks his own party and really kind of moderates much of the Democratic agenda in the U.S. Senate, especially over the last 2 years. And that is where Joe Manchin, not ruling out running as a third-party presidential candidate against the likes of Joe Biden and potentially Donald Trump, is notable. I want to let you hear part of his reasoning as to why he's considering this bid in my conversation with him. Take a listen.
Don't you believe that this country is as divided as they want to make you believe? Washington's divided. The politics is dividing the country, making you pick a side. There's only one side, the American side. And that's where people want to be.
So If you believe that, and if that's where the American public is, would you be open to running for a third-party presidential ticket?
Let's see where everybody goes. Let's see what happens. Maybe they'll come to their senses and start doing the job they were elected to do.
Lindsay, NBC News' own polling here from this summer showed that 44% of American voters said they would consider a third-party candidate in the scenario it is a rematch of Donald Trump and Joe Biden. The big question is, who would those candidates be? Could it potentially be Joe Manchin? There's a lot of outstanding variables here at play.
Vaughn, what has history taught us about third-party candidates, and what do we know about this No Labels group and their response to criticism from Democrats that they'd essentially be handing the election to former President Trump?
Right. Several national Democrats, including even the likes of Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, have expressed concern and skepticism about this group's efforts because they say it could potentially siphon votes off from Joe Biden and help boost Donald Trump back into the White House. I was talking to a former longtime senior advisor to No Labels, William Galston, who left the group this spring in opposition to this presidential ticket for that very reason. I put the question about the concerns of potentially the third-party No Labels ticket playing spoiler. Take a listen to Nancy Jacobson. She's the CEO and founder of the group. Her response to me.
Listen, we've said from the beginning, all of our leaders have said, we are not going to spoil. We're not going to offer our ballot line if it looks like it's going to be a wasted vote at all. Nobody looks to spoil. We would look to offer our ballot line if this is a ticket that can win.
The issue is that Nancy Jacobson, despite my repeated efforts, wouldn't lay down what the metrics were to determine whether they would move forward with this presidential ticket or not. Their convention is slated for next April. We should know who they would put up as the candidates at that point. But they continue to put out the prospect that they may not go forward with this despite qualifying for the ballots. There's a lot of questions for No Labels to answer here in these months ahead as they consider this third-party run.
Vaughn, you travel the country talking to good folk. I think a future show or segment of that title should be in the works at some point. What have people been telling you? Is there an appetite for this?
There is. The issue is when I've asked folks, Joe Biden, Donald Trump rematch, would you be open to another option? They say, yes, we need somebody who's going to unite, bring our neighborhoods together, and come around common sense solutions. That is what this group is trying to achieve. But of course, the idea of a third-party candidate is a lot easier for the mind to wrap one's head around than actually finding a human who is out there with the name recognition that could actually take on Donald Trump and Joe Biden. As that former No Label senior advisor told me, he goes, if there is some charming, influential American figure that he is unaware of that could sweep the country and not be a partisan figure, let him know who that is. Because in a lot of folks' minds, that could be anywhere from Ted Cruz to Bernie Sanders. But to find that sweet spot, that is going to be the challenge here for No Labels.
Vaughn Hilliard, thank you.
Coming up on this hour of Morning News Now, this is really unbelievable. A miracle maritime rescue of a sailor and his trusty canine companion. Get this, the two of them saved after spending 3 months adrift in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Their incredible story of survival after the break.
But first, a critical new piece of evidence in the investigation into those Gilgo Beach murders here in New York. Why investigators say a pickup truck found hundreds of miles from the crime scenes could be a critical clue. We've got that and more next.
Welcome back. This morning, the family of the Alabama woman who went missing for 2 days is speaking out in an NBC News exclusive interview.
And they address the growing demands for answers surrounding Carlee Russell's mysterious disappearance. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson sat down with them. She joins us now from Hoover, Alabama. Priscilla, what did they tell you?
Yeah, as questions around this case intensify, the family is urging the public not to speculate. They say that it's upsetting to Carlee, and right now their focus is on her physical and mental well-being. That moment you all first laid eyes on her again, what was it like?
To me, I mean, just so much joy.
This morning, in an exclusive sit-down with NBC News, the parents of 25-year-old Carlee Russell are speaking out, describing the moment their daughter appeared on their doorstep after being missing for more than 48 hours. What did you do when you saw her?
We tried to hug her as best we could, but I had to stand back because she was not in a good state. So we had to stand back and let medical professionals work with her. But it's
Last Thursday, police say Carly called 911 to report a toddler walking alone on the interstate. She pulled over while on the phone with a family member who described hearing Carly scream.
Her vehicle's unlocked, running. All her personal belongings except for her phone.
On the scene, police found no sign of Carly or a child, and they say no children were reported as missing during that time period. The Russells waited in agony until Saturday night.
There were actually just so many calls and texts from people who maliciously lied to us. I just didn't know people could be so evil.
Authorities have not indicated where Carly was during the 48 hours she was missing or what happened. Her parents declined to share what their daughter told them, citing the ongoing investigation.
And can you tell me what happened Saturday night? Did you just get a knock at the door?
Anything leading to the case itself, we can't discuss that.
But they say speculation about the circumstances surrounding Carly's disappearance are only making things worse.
She's having to deal with the trauma of people just making completely false allegations about her.
Her family now urging the public to let the investigation play out, but mentioning an abductor. Her mother asking to read a brief message to the public.
Carly has given detectives her statement so that they can continue to pursue her abductor.
Do you believe that there's an abductor still out there?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
NBC News has reached out to the Hoover Police Department to ask whether they're looking for an individual involved. Police have just said they're following up on all information provided by Carly.
And when I talked to you all on Saturday, you also said your daughter is a fighter and she would find a way back to you.
I felt that in my heart.
Is that what happened?
She did. She found her way back to us. However, we can't discuss the details of that.
But they say one thing is clear.
Do you believe she was fighting for her life?
Oh, she definitely fought for her life. There were moments when she physically had to fight for her life, and there were moments when she had to mentally fight for her life.
But she made it back to you.
She made it back.
And as for the investigation, police say that they're analyzing that initial 911 call and video from the interstate during the time that Carly disappeared. They're also looking at everything they found at the crime scene, her car, her purse, and her cell phone that was found on the roadway. Police say they have been able to account for where she was in the moments before that 911 call, but after she disappeared, those 48 hours still remain a mystery. Lindsay, Savannah?
Wow. So many questions still, Priscilla. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Priscilla.
And this morning, we're learning more about a key piece of evidence leading to the arrest of a suspected serial killer on New York's Long Island. A truck belonging to the accused murderer was seized hundreds of miles away.
NBC News senior national correspondent Stephanie Gosk spoke with the district attorney who brought the charges in this case.
Hey there, the Long Island district attorney tells me they may have their suspect in custody, but the investigation is not slowing down. Multiple locations are involved, including a property in South Carolina and 2 storage units discovered not far from where the bodies were found on Gilgo Beach.
A critical piece of evidence in the Gilgo Beach murder case has been found hundreds of miles away in rural Chester, South Carolina. According to local and federal officials, police seized the alleged serial killer's early model Chevy Avalanche at a property belonging to a family member. A witness told investigators he saw one of the victims get into the same kind of truck the last time she was seen alive.
He also matched the unique physical description of the individual. A very large man, not muscular, but a very just physically large man, black hair, glasses, white, and somewhat unique looking, described as an ogre.
59-year-old Rex Sherman has pleaded not guilty to killing 3 young women whose remains were found over a decade ago. Their bodies dumped along a remote stretch of Gilgo Beach on Long Island's South Shore. Sherman's house in Massapequa Park, less than a 30-minute drive from the crime scene, is now the focus of the investigation.
The house is cluttered, and we're going to go inch by inch through that house. We're going to get everything.
According to the Suffolk County District Attorney, the architect and father of two had permits for 92 handguns. Inside, the police commissioner says they found hundreds of weapons.
It's over 200 guns. He had an arsenal in a vault that he had downstairs. Anytime somebody has that type of arsenal, we have some concerns.
Police have also searched 2 storage units in the town of Amityville, right across the bay from Gilgo Beach. DNA samples and cell phone pings near Heuermann's home and his Manhattan office helped investigators crack the case. A total of 11 remains were originally discovered on Gilgo Beach, and police say they have substantial evidence connecting Heuermann to the disappearance of at least one other victim, which means more charges could be coming in an investigation that's far from over.
The DA also says they made the arrest a bit early, in his words, because they were worried about exposing the investigation. Heuermann is now being held without bail. Back to you.
All right, Stephanie, thank you. Let's take a look at international headlines now, starting with new developments following an attack on a key bridge in Crimea.
NBC News foreign correspondent Ali Arouzi joins us now with more on that developing story. Hey, Ali, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. Good morning, Lindsay. That's right. Russian authorities say that the bridge linking Crimea to Russia has partially reopened a day after it was attacked. Officials posted pictures of vehicles using a single lane of the bridge to cross the Kerch Strait. Following the attack, Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed a military response, and sure enough, Ukraine was attacked by a wave of missiles and drones overnight. 2 more tourists have been caught apparently vandalizing the Colosseum in Rome following similar incidents in June. On Friday, a 17-year-old Swiss girl was spotted apparently carving her initials into one of the walls of the building by a tour guide who alerted the police. The very next day, a 17-year-old German student was caught allegedly doing exactly the same thing. Both teenagers risk a fine of almost $17,000 and possibly up to 5 years in jail. And finally, police in Australia are baffled by a giant metal dome that's washed up on the beach. Authorities are investigating the unidentified object, which isn't believed to have come from a commercial aircraft. It's being treated as hazardous, and police have asked people to keep a safe distance from it. It's hoped that a serial number or a catalog number will shed some light on what this mystery is. Those are your international headlines, guys.
Back to the Coliseum. If people keep doing that, we're not going to be able to go up to it anymore.
No, it's kind of unbelievable. And
there won't be a Coliseum left.
Exactly. Oof. All right.
Ali Arouzi, good point. Thank you.
Thanks. Turning now to one man's extraordinary story of survival at sea. A sailor and his dog stranded for months in the middle of the ocean after a storm knocked out their boat's communications.
That is until fate and a whole lot of luck stepped in. Here's Today anchor Chanel Jones with the story.
Hey there, this is truly stunning. 54-year-old Australian sailor Tim Shattuck and his dog were rescued by fishermen in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Incredibly, they survived for months by eating raw fish and drinking rainwater, and their amazing rescue was all caught on tape. Call it a real-life castaway. Australian sailor Tim Shattuck looking gaunt and haggard, but alive. Saved after missing for 3 months at sea, say his rescuers. This video shot by them and obtained by 9 News Australia.
I have not had enough food for a long time.
The 54-year-old and his dog Bella found on their catamaran by a Mexican tuna trawler in the Pacific Ocean. The duo surviving by eating raw fish and drinking rainwater. Their ordeal began back in April when Shattuck and Bella departed from the Baja California Peninsula, bound for French Polynesia, a 3,700-mile journey. But 2 weeks into the voyage, trouble. A heavy storm taking out their boat's communication systems. The duo drifting for months on the open sea, holding on to hope and each other. Then a miracle. Their stranded boat spotted by a helicopter. The duo soon pulled to safety by fishermen.
We've been through a very difficult ordeal at sea, and I'm just needing rest and good food because I've been alone at sea a long time.
According to his rescuers, Shattuck had fishing and survival equipment on his boat and avoided sunburns and heat stroke by staying under its canopy. Experts say another key to his survival may have been his dog.
It provided companionship. It provided a purpose. It gave Tim something that he had to do each day, something to look after.
Shattuck, an IT expert from Sydney and reported stage 4 cancer survivor, is now doing well and showing normal vital signs, according to the crew's rep.
I have very good medicine. I'm being looked after very well.
His story of survival, a lesson for us all. Even when the odds seem stacked against you, never give up. Shattuck and his dog Bella were under the care of a doctor on board the fishing trawler and reportedly landed in Mexico last night. Shattuck's mother saying she is incredibly relieved her son was found safe. Back to you.
Wow, Chanel Jones, thank you. 3 months. Talk about a will to live. Just amazing. You just said I need sleep and good food. Yeah, I bet. You deserve it. Wow. Oh, my goodness. All right, coming up, a big step forward in treating some of America's youngest patients with the respiratory illness known as RSV.
We've got more on a new drug that's just been approved by the FDA for children up to 2 years old. You're watching Morning News Now.
We're back now with more on a new drug approved by the Food and Drug Administration aimed at treating children up to 2 years old suffering from RSV. That's a respiratory virus.
And the CDC is going to meet to discuss recommendations on who should get the shots before the injection becomes available to the public. So NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar is joining us now to talk about this. Doctor, it's so good to see you. I mean, before we talk about this breakthrough here, last winter we talked so much about RSV. My little girl was 9 months old at the time. I was really worried. Remind us what it is and who it impacts the most.
Yeah, actually, so RSV is a respiratory virus that we typically see in the fall and winter. And in people of all ages, it very commonly causes sort of a cold-like illness with what we call upper respiratory tract symptoms, sneezing, sore throat, that kind of thing. But in more vulnerable people, including older but younger, like preemies, kids who are born with premature lungs, kids born with congenital heart disease, that upper respiratory tract infection can make its way down into the lower respiratory tract and cause pneumonia and bronchiolitis. 1 to 3% of kids under the age of 12 months are hospitalized because of RSV every year. And even if your child is born healthy and has no underlying issues, they can become that sick to become hospitalized. It's really, really scary, you guys.
So let's not talk about this drug. So this is by AstraZeneca. We know very well now from COVID vaccines. So how does it work? Who should be taking it?
So the drug is now available for either infants or neonates who are born during or right before what would be their first RSV season, or kids up to the age of 2 years who have those underlying vulnerabilities that I mentioned before. It is a one shot into the arm. It's called intramuscular. And the way it works, it's called a monoclonal antibody. And all that basically means is that it kind of mimics what your own immune response would do in response to being exposed to the virus. So it kind of like sets up an army of antibodies that are already there and waiting should you become exposed to RSV, which again is very likely because it is one of those viruses that's kind of ubiquitous in our environment.
So doctor, we got to be quick with you on this, but what should we know when it comes to potential side effects?
So potential side effects were actually pretty minor, a little rash, some injection site reaction, typical vaccine reactions, but nothing else that was of concern. So again, if you're out there, if you are pregnant or you have a young infant, please discuss with your pediatrician about when this will become available. As you mentioned, the CDC will make recommendations probably in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, good advice, Dr. Azar. Thank you so much. Coming up, we're a little more than halfway through the year, so you know what that means. Not Christmas in July. Time to start thinking about your taxes.
I don't know if other people think it's time yet, but if you get started early, you might be able to avoid some headaches down the line. So we've got your mid-year check-in after this. Welcome back. We're going to tell you now about a growing problem in the state of Florida. More insurance companies are pulling out of the state, leaving homeowners left with difficult decisions to make. As NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez explains, it's an issue that's now hitting the presidential campaign trail.
68-year-old Tina Zaro has paid off her home in Lake Worth, Florida, and is living off Social Security. But her home insurance has skyrocketed by a whopping 130%.
It's very scary, but what do you do? It's crazy, just crazy.
Now, when her policy expires at the end of the year, she'll drop it because she says she can't afford it, leaving her family even more worried about the next hurricane.
Well, I want everything for my mom. Don't make me cry. I wish I could wave a magic wand and make it perfect.
The issue taking center stage over the weekend as former President Trump attacked Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Because you have the highest insurance in the nation.
Last week, Farmers Insurance said it would stop renewing almost a third of its policies in Florida, affecting about 100,000 customers. AAA also says it would not renew some policies.
It's a national problem, but we have seen no solutions to deal with inflation or interest rates out of Washington, D.C.
Jimmy Petronas is Florida's chief financial officer and a DeSantis ally. He blames the problem on what he calls woke insurance companies with liberal executives.
You believe that this has something to do with woke policies instead of a plain old-fashioned business decision?
100%. The woke policies that these corporations embrace are them not having their eye on that target.
Some insurers in other disaster-prone states like California and Louisiana have also pulled coverage. Analysts say there are several reasons: extreme weather linked to climate change, a soaring number of lawsuits by policyholders, and ongoing battles with state regulators.
We're going to have another legislative session next year. If we have to tweak things in order to make it more compatible and helpful for the Florida consumer, we'll do it.
The DeSantis administration is touting that another major insurer, State Farm, has recommitted to the state. Back to you.
Gabe, thank you so much.
Now for some financial headlines. Peacock is making changes to its subscription fees.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with those details and more. Hey, Silvana.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Lindsay. Good morning. Yeah, so NBC Universal is raising prices for Peacock by as much as $2 a month. Now, the increase comes as the streaming service continues to lose money and has been spending more on live sports and original content. Peacock's premium plan will go up by $1 to $5.99 a month, while the ad-free tier will increase by $2 to $11.99 a month. The changes go into effect immediately for new customers and August 17th for current subscribers. Comcast, the parent of NBC Universal, has said it expects Peacock's losses to peak around $3 billion this year, then steadily improve. Threads usage continues to unravel after a red-hot start that saw it amass more than 100 million users in 5 days this month. Meta's Twitter alternative may be slowing down. Research firm SimilarWeb says Threads' daily active users on Android devices has fallen to 23.6 million from 49 million. People are also spending less time on the app, to just over 6 minutes, down from a peak of about 20 minutes. And Hewlett-Packard is working with suppliers to move some production of consumer and business laptops from China to Thailand and Mexico. The Nikkei reports this is the computer maker's first substantial move to diversify its supply chain. The move comes after rival Dell launched a campaign to exclude made-in-China chips from its products and reduce its use of electronic components made in the country. In a statement to the Nikkei, HP says it's expanding existing operations in Southeast Asia and elsewhere, and it remains committed to China. Back to you.
All right, Silvana, thank you so much.
You got it.
It's July, and you might be thinking about your vacation, but what you should be thinking about is tax season. We're only 3 months removed from the end of the tax filing season. It's never too early to start planning.
I'm going to need our next guest to convince me of this one. So July supposedly could be an ideal time for a mid-year tax checkup since we're about halfway through the year. Joining us now,
save money, don't you?
Mark Staber. He's the Senior Vice President and Chief Tax Information Officer for Jackson Hewitt Tax Service. Mark, it's always great to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. Convince me. Why should I start now? Why should I even remotely be thinking about this right now?
Were you happy with last year's tax result? Probably not. A lot of people weren't.
Yeah.
Balance dues are up, refunds are down. And here's the thing. A lot of people come in and say at the last minute, give me your tax tip. Yeah, I need to save a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, that's a hard thing to do. There's no magic silver bullet to move $5,000 into your refund off your balance due. You need to take it one step at a time, and you need to go at it from many angles. More money in your retirement plan. Put some money aside on your W-4 with withholding. Look at your self-employment expenses. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but you can't do them all in December.
Right.
9 women can't have a baby in 1 month. It takes 9 months, or in 6 months in this case. So you put a little attention to it, you'll get a better result.
I don't even know if I'm thinking about it then.
So I'm the average person. Where are some of the first places that I should be looking to make sure that everything will be good for I guess I would only see a few months of benefit. But
Well, a simple one is if your company has a 401k match, which many companies do now, there's not many pensions. And if you're not participating at least to the match and receiving both tax deferral on your contribution, tax-free growth, and the company match, there's 3 benefits right there. If you're self-employed and keeping records just on a ledger with a piece of paper and not using technology, you're probably not claiming all the deductions that you can do to lower your taxes there. And there's a host of others, depending on if you're newly married, you have a child, a dependent, you bought some green energy equipment for your house or a car. There's a never-ending list, but it doesn't happen in December, and it's not one quick tip. It's a lot of quick tips over a period of time where it's less painful. The big one we saw last year is a lot more people owed because they changed the W-4, your amount of withholding. Now, that applies to employees primarily, but a lot of people have side gigs. If you're not happy with your refund, go and adjust your W-4, put an extra $25 a paycheck in. It'll be less painful than owing $2,000 in April.
That's a very good tip. All right, so if you're having heart palpitations, because we're talking about this already, and let's say you missed the deadline from this year, or you still owe money and you haven't kind of squared all that up before we're even looking ahead, what advice do you have?
Well, take care of it sooner rather than later, or these things don't go away. It's not like dealing with a credit card company or some vendor that you owe money to. The IRS always gets their man. And so the simple answer is there's a lot of forgiveness rules in the law. If you had a hardship, if you had COVID, if you were displaced, any number of reasons can get you out of penalties and interest. But you are going to have to pay the taxes. I'll finish by saying there's a lot of tax help out there in the market today. Not all of it the same. You want to go with a quality, trained, experienced professional, not somebody that guarantees you the result you need. But there's plenty of help, and plenty of help from the IRS. You have to do some things, and you have to, take some actions, and earlier is better than later. But you shouldn't worry, even if you missed the deadline, and you should have filed an extension, because there's a lot of ways to get out of penalties and interest, but not automatically. You have to take some steps.
I got to be quick with you on this last one. You mentioned one trend that you saw from last year. Anything you're noticing this year so far?
Well, absolutely. The pandemic is kind of over, and so were the stimulus payments, all the increased credits and benefits that were there. A lot less refunds, a lot less people got refunds, and a lot more balance dues last year. We think that's going to happen this year, and part of that's good. A lot more people are making money. They might need to pay a little bit more attention to their single largest financial transaction each and every year, namely doing their taxes.
Okay, Mark Sieber, a lot of good information. Thank you.
I'm a little convinced. I'll start thinking about it.
Yeah. You win the Powerball, you'll be convinced.
Coming up, imagine living out your golden years as a TikTok influencer.
Well, more and more older creators are taking to the talk to show the world what they're really made of. So why now? And what sort of content are they creating? Well, I spoke to some of the biggest names you're seeing on your feed and got the lowdown. That's up next.
Welcome back. If you thought the latest model was expensive, an original iPhone back from 2007 just sold for $190,000. So what makes it so special? Well, the phone is an original first-generation model. It's unopened. It's an original box. A relatively small number of these 4-gigabyte models were made, so the model is in huge demand by Apple's super fans. The phone would have originally retailed at around $600, but this sale at auction sets a new record. Savannah, I don't think I've ever kept anything in a box in its original packaging.
Yeah, I was going to say, this makes me want to go into that drawer I have of wires and old, things that seem like these relics now. But mine would not be in that type of condition, so I have a feeling it wouldn't go for quite that. Maybe a couple thousand, though. I mean, almost 200,000. That's crazy.
A couple dollars on eBay.
Thanks, Lindsay. All right, we end this hour with a new generation of influencers. If you've been scrolling through social media, you may have seen that older creators are popping up more frequently on your feed. Well, experts say brands are now aligning themselves with influencers above the age of 50 in order to stand out. And for TikTok creators like Lynn Davis, though, it is all about being your authentic self.
We're creative, too. It smells great.
You may know Lynn Davis from her cooking videos. Or recognize one of her signature catchphrases.
Let's see if it's bussin' or not.
Initially, the woman behind the wildly entertaining TikTok account @CookingWithLinja didn't understand the social media hype. Do you remember when you first heard about TikTok?
I thought it was so crazy. I'm going, why are people so drawn to, people dancing and doing silly things?
But when COVID hit, she and her son Tim, a videographer, found themselves with some spare time on their hands.
They're not just cooking videos. There's something really special about what you do in your videos.
I think a lot of our appeal is Tim's videography and editing, how entertaining he makes, and the special effects. I think people are really drawn to that. It's me, the grilling grandma.
The page's signature style has attracted more than 16 million followers in the last 3 years.
Lynn, what's it like to be TikTok famous?
Once in a while, I'll get recognized at the grocery store or in the airport.
What's it like to get to do this with your son?
Oh, it has made us so close. I think of him as a confidant. It's just been a wonderful and marvelous thing.
Lynn is not the only creator working with their children. Fashion influencer Jim Tan started her page at California is Too Casual with her daughter Mia's encouragement.
She just said, "Oh my God, Mom, I love the way you dress." My friends always comment about how stylish your mom is. Why don't you just post an outfit today? You can do that in your sleep.
Just a year and a half later, she has nearly 250,000 followers and more than 4.1 million likes on TikTok.
Okay, go off, queen.
And at age 62, Jim is getting calls for partnerships with brands marketed towards younger audiences.
I wore a dress that maybe people might not think is something a 62-year-old would gravitate towards, but there's no clothing tags that say this is only for 25 to 35.
And she's not alone. According to a New York Times report, the past 18 months have seen an increase in the popularity of older TikTok creators.
Here's a woman who's more mature, but her attitude is very youthful. And the reality of the situation is that the older demographic has a lot of money to spend, and there's very few brands that are talking to us.
And people like Jim and Lynn have been able to make a business out of filling that gap.
Why do you think your videos caught on in such a huge way?
I don't mind doing crazy, zany things. And I think a lot of young people like the idea of a grandma who's like running around the backyard in a turkey costume.
And you're getting paid for it. Do you remember the first sponsorship you got?
Oh, the first thing we got for free was an air fryer. That air fryer is in a lot of our videos still. He has big googly eyes on him.
Lynn doesn't always take on brand partnerships, but one thing she constantly agrees to.
When someone asks you for a selfie, what do you think?
Oh, I always say yes.
Okay, she gets asked a lot, by the way, and they were so much fun to talk to. Well, it looks like the shift into older creatives is here to stay. Jim is part of something called the Sephora Squad. That's kind of like the Amazon influencer program, but for people of all ages who want to develop their skills as content creators. It's just so much fun. I mean, watching the videos, you get it. It's addicting to sit there and look at them.
Yeah, I'd watch them for sure.
I know, it's so great. And they have these whole new careers. It's awesome.
Well, that'll do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.